I appreciate those of you that are helping with the radio ministry. We're on the radio 5 days a week and able to at least get the gospel out to hundreds of thousands of people. And I appreciate your continued support for the radio ministry. We're going to have our new book of Hebrews finished in just hopefully a few weeks. And I want to encourage some of you, to start supporting the radio ministry. It is $50 a day. I believe that's the current price. But if you could help with one day a month or something like that to help pay for radio time, it would be a great outreach. And what I will do is I'll make you a gift of that new commentary on the book of Hebrews. It's a good book, isn't it, Lisa? Yes. You got it right. But anyway, yeah, she learned a lot, and she's a teacher, and if she can learn a lot, why, the rest of us can sure learn. So, but anyway, as soon as it's finished, I'll be getting a letter out to you and making that offer to you and encouraging you to help us with our radio ministry. Also, we're able to be on local cable television, one day a week right now, and of course that's free. You can't beat free, and but we'd like to do more, and we're going to if we can. So I hope you'll just continue to pray for Brother Kennedy as he works with the outreach ministry, the advertisement. How many of you have seen the new ad on the buses, on the city buses? They look pretty sharp, don't they? And folks started riding a lot more since we put that on there. But I think it's a nice, and that's Brother Kennedy and his wife put that all together. That's their idea. And I think it's a great job, a good advertisement for our church, and lets them know that Open Door Baptist is trying to reach families and help families with their Christian life and help them in their growth. The book of Revelation, the more I think about the book, I believe, there's what happened to my, he's efficient, isn't he? Okay. You know, the more I think about the book of Revelation, I'm about 99% persuaded that there are 7 rather than 6, but there are 7 looping parallels in the book. The more I think about those 7 churches there, and I've mentioned that to you when we talked about the 7 churches, but when you see Jesus presented there as the great high priest in the early part of the book, you see him standing in the midst of the churches. And certainly that is his position all the way through the book. Then in chapter 2 and 3, you have the writer taking you through again with the 7 churches. So the more I think about it, I wouldn't die for that yet, but I am leaning in that direction. Now then, what we've said about the book is, here's the midpoint of what we call the day of the Lord. Now, this does not mean that the tribulation period starts immediately at the day of the rapture of the church. There's nothing in the Bible that says the church is raptured and the tribulation starts immediately. It may, but I don't think it will. I think that when the church is raptured, I still think there will be several years before the tribulation will start. It doesn't have to be that way, but I have a reason for saying that. Now, however, there is a period that is known as Daniel's 70th week. And you study the book of Daniel, and you'll see that, and you'll begin to see that 69 of those weeks are completed. There is 1 week that is yet to be fulfilled. And there's been a 2,000-year gap between the 69th week and the 70th week. And these are weeks of years. And so this last week is yet to come. And it is repeatedly mentioned in the Bible. It's mentioned in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation. And it's referred to sometimes as a time, times, and half a time. Sometimes it's referred to as 42 months. Sometimes it's 1,200 days, 1,260 days, I believe. But anyway, and so it's divided right in the middle, the 3.5 years. It's interesting that that's the same amount of time that Jesus had for his ministry, is the 3.5 years. Now, we said that when you open the first seal here in chapter 6 and verse 1, those 6 seals will take you all the way through the book of Revelation, right up to the return of Christ. Then the 7th seal opens. And, the 7th seal doesn't open. It takes you through. Then the writer takes you through again and shows you the 144,000. Ushers, can you please help her, please? The 144,000 are sealed, and they go through the tribulation period. Now then, when you get to chapter 8, the writer goes back and starts with the trumpets, but he goes back to the middle. He doesn't go back to the beginning. He takes you through that 3.5-year period with the trumpets. Then in chapter 10 and 11, he gives you the details of the sounding of the trumpet. He goes back and gives you the details. Then in chapter 12, and that's where we are tonight, in chapter 12 through 14, and that's the section we're dealing with. We dealt with last Sunday, and we'll be dealing with them again. The writer goes all the way back to Genesis 3:15. Then he stops, and he alludes to 37:9, and then he comes right back up to the middle of the tribulation period. He doesn't cover the first 3.5 years. He jumps up to the midpoint, and he starts taking you through it, but he gives you the scope rather than the details. Now, in chapter 14, verse 6 through 20, he'll give you the details showing the satanic plan against Israel and her seed. So what we'll be looking at tonight is this last half of the tribulation period, and we'll see the woman and his satanic plan against Israel, and then how he works that out through the nations and through the Antichrist. I hope that helps you a little bit. Now, when you get to chapter 12, you'll notice that John sees a great wonder. Verse 1, chapter 12, he sees a great wonder in heaven. That word wonder is the word sign. If you check your Strong's Concordance and look up the word wonder, it'll be a sign. It's the first time it's used in the book of Revelation. It is used, I think, 2 other times. It's used 2 other times. It's used in the chapter 1 time, and then it's used also toward the end of the book a 2nd time. But it's a sign, which means then for Israel, and the sign is for Israel, because Israel, the Jews, require a sign. So the sign is to Israel, and the sign is to tell them and let them know that this struggle that is going on is a struggle between Satan and his seed and the woman and her seed, and help them to understand that that there's a satanic plan behind the whole thing. Verse 1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And so we went back last Sunday night, and I hope we established in your mind that this woman is the nation of Israel. It is not the church. It is not the Virgin Mary. It's not Mary Baker Eddy. It's not Ellen G. White. It is not any female cult leader. The woman is the nation of Israel. And we looked at several scriptures showing that Israel is likened to a woman all the way through the Old Testament. And even in the book of Revelation, it's a woman again. So we talked about the woman and established her identity. Then we talked about the man-child. This woman is ready to have a child. Look down in verse. Look at verse 2. And she being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. Now, the Bible says, as soon as Zion travails, she brings forth. You ought to check out the cross references. As soon as Zion travails, she brings forth. God says, shall I bring to the birth and not let it, not let it happen? And so, she being great with child. Then, if you go down to verse 5, it says, and she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God in his throne. Now, the first thing that would come to your mind is you would think that this is talking about the Virgin Mary and about the Lord Jesus Christ in His first advent. Now, I've read enough of commentators, and some of them will say, they'll say, yeah, that is the Virgin Mary bringing forth Jesus, and then there's a 2,000-year gap between, I think, verse 5 and verse 6 in your text. However, I submit to you that the woman is not Mary. The woman is the nation of Israel, and the man-child, in one application, may be Jesus Christ. But we looked at Scripture to show that the man-child is also a remnant of the nation of Israel. Let's go back to chapter 2 in the book of Revelation, and just note this again so that we can be brought up to date. I don't want you to just get stuck on this man-child ruling with a rod of iron is the Lord Jesus Christ. It is Jesus, but not exclusively. Look at chapter 2 in the book of Revelation and down about verse 26. And notice the church that he's talking to. He's talking to the church at Thyatira. Look at verse 26. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As a vessel of potter, they shall be broken into shivers, even as I received of my Father, and I will give to him the morning star. So here you have a remnant of the church of Thyatira who are called overcomers. And overcomers, and that's what the book of Hebrews through Revelation is about. It's about the overcomers. And the overcomers, the church at Thyatira, is going to constitute at least part of that remnant. And they are going to be allowed to rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years, and they rule with a rod of iron. You get the picture? So I know Jesus rules with a rod of iron. We looked at Psalm 2, makes it very clear. Kiss the Son lest he be angry. It says the Son will rule with a rod of iron. But Jesus is saying that the overcomers who overcome as he overcame will rule with him using a rod of iron. Now this is a governmental thing. That means that Jesus rules out of Jerusalem, and then there will be certain people who will rule around the world under him as ambassadors and leaders. And I submit to you, I'm not sure that any of those will be members of the body of Christ, the church. If it is, I hope I'm one of them, because I can have fun with a rod of iron. But anyway, so we've talked about the woman being Israel, and then the woman brings forth a son. Now there's something we just established, I think, that the son, the man-child, that rules with a rod of iron is not only the Lord Jesus Christ, but it is a remnant. Now, there is a remnant in the context here. You don't get very far in the context until you read about a remnant being caught up to God. And if you look at chapter 13, let's go to chapter 14. Chapter 14. It says, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. Now that 144,000 shows up in Revelation chapter 7. They are sealed, right? So we all know that they're Jehovah's Witnesses, because there's 144,000 of them. And they are sealed in the first part of the tribulation, in the first 3.5 years. Now, to me, I believe they are witnesses. I suspect that they are preachers throughout the world, that they are Jews that will be preaching the gospel of the kingdom around the world as given in the Great Commission in Matthew 28, 19, and 20. And they, in that first 3.5 years, that's what they'll be doing. Many of their followers will be martyred, and that group is also mentioned as martyrs. But now listen what it says about this 144,000. He says, I see them on Mount Zion, and they have the Father's name in their forehead. Notice it's right the contrast to the Antichrist, because his followers have their name in his he has get it. His followers have his name in their foreheads, just as these who follow Christ or who follow God have his name. Look at verse 2. And I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, the voice of thunder, and I heard the voices and harps harping with their harps, and they sung, as it were, a new song, which takes you back to Moses and the crowd that came over out of Egypt. They escaped Pharaoh and his false teachers, and this group has escaped, and they have crossed over, having been caught up to be with the Lord in the air. And verse 3, and they sung a song that no one could learn except the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Now the idea here being redeemed from the earth is they are harvested from the earth. They are saved out of the tribulation that's going on, because they're not the only ones redeemed throughout the whole tribulation period. So there's a special redemption that takes place for these. Verse 4. And these are they which are not defiled with women. So, if we're literalists, these are all men, like the Apostle Paul, and that's my belief. I think the 144,000 are men. And it says that these are not defiled with women, for they are virgins. So they've never been married, nor have they been immoral. And these are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men. And so the implication is here they've been removed. And they have been removed. They've been removed from the earth. They were on the earth in chapter 7 all the way up to this point, and now they have been raptured, and they've been caught up to be with the Lord in heaven. Now, I say all that to say this. These 144,000 constitute the firstborn that the woman, Israel, is bringing forth. You get the picture? Okay. You say, well, I believe Jesus is. He is. Jesus is also, so don't sweat it. Jesus rules with a rod of iron, but there's also an overcoming remnant that rules with a rod of iron. Get the picture? They both rule. Jesus was caught up to heaven after the resurrection, 40 days after he'd been with his disciples. These will be caught up to heaven. Jesus is called the firstborn, the firstborn, and he was Mary's firstborn. These are the firstborn that are caught up and caught up during that tribulation period. And they are redeemed from among men. And so we have the woman Israel, and we have the firstborn, as far as the context is concerned, is the 144,000. Now when you come to chapter 12 and verse 3, and we break it up this way for clarity, at least it's clear to me, we're dealing with three personages. We're dealing with the nation, with the woman. We're dealing with the son, the firstborn, and then we're dealing with the dragon. Look at chapter 12 and verse 1 again. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon, and the 12 stars. And verse 3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns on his head. Now, Lord willing, next week we will deal with those 7 heads and the 10 horns, and we will try to identify them as best we can. But we're not going to get into that tonight. Now, last week we talked about here we have the battle going on in heaven at the midpoint of the tribulation period. There's a battle going on between Michael. If you look down about verse, verse 4. Let me see. Verse 7, okay? Thank you. And there was war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. Now today, the devil has access to the heavens. In fact, he's the prince and the power of the air, and you notice in the book of Job that he goes and he stands before the Lord, and he brings an accusation against Job. And even in this chapter, it says the accuser of the brethren is cast down. Now this event takes place, it's yet future. The devil has access in the air, and also to the earth. But this event takes place in the middle of the 3.5-year tribulation, or the 7-year tribulation. So it is in the middle here when the devil and his angels are literally cast out of heaven down to the earth. And so Michael and his angels have cleansed the heavens. Though they've not been redeemed, they've cleansed the heavens of at least Lucifer, the old dragon, and his angels, and they're cast out. The heavens rejoice. You'll read about it in the text. The heavens rejoice because the accuser of the brethren is cast out, but they say, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, for the devil is come down to you, having great wrath, for he knows he has but a little time. He only has 3.5 years left at this time. So what does he do? Let me see if I can find that in verse 7. There's the battle that goes on, and look at verse 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of the brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Now that's what the devil does, ladies and gentlemen. He's always the accuser of God. Remember the other day when I preached my sermon last Sunday on the hate crime, and I tried to point out to you that the battle that is raging is not between you and the devil. The battle that is raging is between the devil and God. That's the battle. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. That's always been the battle. You and I are just on the battlefield. We become the casualties. And the devil tries to influence us so we will defect and abandon God. But the battle has always been the devil trying to discredit and trying to remove God from his place of his throne. He said, I will ascend into the height of the clouds. I will ascend above the stars. I will be like the Most High God. That's his ambition. When he was on the earth attempting Jesus Christ, he said, if you be the Son of God, turn these stones to bread. Jesus said, man should not live by bread alone. He set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said, if you be the Son of God, cast yourself down, for it is written, the angels will bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus said, it is written, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And then he tempted him one more time, showing him all the kingdoms of the world. And he said, I will give these to you, if you will worship me, for they are mine to give to whomsoever I will. You see what motivates the devil? He wants to dethrone God. He wants all power. And he has taken it to a great degree. In fact, it looks like he's winning. But we know how it's going to come out. Amen. But I'll tell you what, before it turns out, the entire world follows after this man who is motivated and filled with Satan. That's where the world is headed. You understand? So, if the Lord tarries, you better fasten your seatbelts, because it's a rough ride up ahead. Okay? But let not your heart be troubled. See? It's always been rough for people who live for Christ. And it certainly is going to be rougher for those in the tribulation, and it's been rougher for our forefathers. We've had it easy. Right? Okay. All right. Look at verse 11. And they overcome him with the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. And they love not their lives unto death. And I said to you repeatedly that overcoming doesn't mean that you will survive. Overcoming means that you don't deny him. Jesus Christ was an overcomer, but he went to the cross. He overcame the Satan. Satan tried to tempt him. And he said, it's written, thou shalt not, thou shalt serve the Lord thy God, and so on. He was a victor in this. He was victorious. Look at verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil is come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he has but a short time. All right? So we've said that's in the middle of the tribulation period. There's only 3.5 years left when this event takes place. And it's a sign. And the Jews are being told there's a sign taking place here, and you need to know what it is. Verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. Hasn't happened yet. Not as it's going to. Now that woman has been persecuted down through the centuries, but not like she's going to be persecuted. I submit to you that Adolf Hitler's treatment of the Jews is like a Sunday school picnic compared to what is coming for Israel. Jesus said himself in Matthew 24 that there's never been a time on the earth and never shall be that's going to be like that last 3.5 years. In fact, here's what he said in Matthew 24. Unless those days would be shortened, no flesh would be left alive. Okay? And the goal will be to destroy Israel because the promise of the seed and the kingdom is through the nation of Israel. He tried to stop the Son of God when he was being born, but he couldn't. He tried to keep him in the grave, but he couldn't. And then he will try to destroy the remnant down through the centuries, but he can't because the kingdom promises are through Israel. Don't you understand, if Israel is destroyed, God's kingdom promises can never be fulfilled unless you spiritualize everything and believe it's the church. Yeah? There's a majority of religious leaders today who believe that the promises of God have nothing to do with Israel in the future. I believe that the major part of the promises of God have to do with Israel in the future. There's the difference. All right. So, when the devil is cast down, the first thing he does is he turns on Israel. Now remember, someone has made a peace agreement. Did you see the news today? Oh yeah, Israel and Syria is getting serious about talking. Isn't it amazing right at this time Israel and Syria are talking about signing their peace? First time they've ever talked about it. First time the Pope's ever been there in hundreds of years, meeting with the PLO leader and meeting with the leaders of Israel. And the topic is that the people are going to have to unite and let Israel become the center of the religion for the three major religions of the world. Isn't that interesting? That means if they do it, Israel has to have a temple, and the rest of them have to allow them to build it. And they will allow them to build it. And Israel is going to build their tribulation temple. And if the Lord tarries, you're going to live to see it. But don't get troubled. I said that many things can happen before the rapture takes place. See? And I suspect that we may see Israel literally build that tribulation temple. See? Wouldn't surprise me. I'd love to see it, as long as it's before the rapture. I don't want to see it after the. If I see it from the rapture, after the rapture, I want to look down on it. Got to qualify these things. I do not want to see it bad enough to stay. All right. Well, when the dragon was cast out, guess what he did? He entered into this man of sin, the Antichrist. He entered into him, incarnated. And now the man is no longer mortal, he is supernatural. And he's evidently been raised from the dead. Many people believe that he gets killed and he's raised from the dead. And it's about 50-50 on that. All right? And so you'll notice then in verse 16 of this same, where we're at now, it says, "And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood it cast out." And I wanted to show you the period of time, and I'm overlooking it somewhere. I'm looking for the 1260 days. Verse 11. Oh, chapter 11? Well, I thought it was before that. It's 3.5 years, so somewhere. 12:6, okay. "And the woman fled into the wilderness." Thank you. "And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her 1,260 days. Again, that's that last 3.5 year period. Now we notice that there was war. Satan is ejected from heaven. Michael and his angels fight against the dragon, and they defeat him in his heavenly realm. And so thus his eviction eventually will take place. He'll be evicted from the earth in Revelation 20 and is sent to the bottomless pit. The dragon is cast down to earth, and his angels are cast out with him. And it is at this point he enters into the Antichrist, and then he moves him to destroy all who stand in his way. And when Satan is removed from heaven, the martyred remnant I mentioned earlier, they began to sing and they praised God. And they declare, as I said, that this is the one who was the accuser of the brethren day and night, and the heavens are called upon to rejoice, and the earth, of course, there's a woe pronounced upon it. Now the writer returns to his account of the woman. If you look down at verse 14, it says that when the dragon saw that he was cast out, he persecuted the woman that brought forth the man-child. And the woman was given 2 wings of an eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness unto her place. Maybe they're air vac out of there, I don't know. But that seems to imply this, talking about the speed and how they get out of there, flying out with wings. And she is nourished there. Look at verse 15, I believe, or 14. It says that this woman is nourished for a time, that's 1 year, and a times, that's 2 years, and a half a time. So you'll notice the different ways the writer identifies this tribulation period. He identifies it as so many months, so many days, so many years, and times. And he does it every way he can so that you'll get the picture that it's in the middle of that tribulation period. You'll notice that there is a flood that is sent out, and this flood is some kind of an attack made upon the remnant in an attempt to destroy it. And the earth protects the remnant. It says the earth opens up its mouth and swallows the flood. Now some believe, as I said last week, that the remnant will hide in the old city of Petra. The city of stone could be the future hiding place of the remnant, but it doesn't have to be. When Korah and his band withstood Moses, the Bible said the earth opened up and swallowed them. So the earth just parted like you'd have an earthquake, and it breaks apart, and they went down into it. So there's no problem, if you believe in God and you know God can do everything. And so when the devil saw what had happened, then he turned his attack, and he went back to Jerusalem. He leaves, if this is down around Petra, the other end of the Dead Sea, then look at verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went and to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandments of God. Now, you just have a remnant that flees into Petra. You've got one remnant that's been raptured. It's the man-child that's already caught up to heaven at this point. That's one. You have a remnant that has been martyred. That's another one. Then you have a remnant that flees into Petra and hides out and is protected for 3.5 years. Then, look at it carefully, then you have the dragon, when he sees that the earth helps the woman, in his anger, he goes back and he makes war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments. So in Jerusalem, ladies and gentlemen, listen, in Jerusalem, there's still a remnant of believing Jews at this 3.5 year period that fails to flee the city. You have a remnant that flees the city. Jesus said in Matthew 24, when you see these things happen, let him that's in Jerusalem and Judea flee. Don't go back to your house to get your coat. Don't leave the field to get anything. Just get out of town. And he says, pray. He said, woe to women that have little babies and that are pregnant during that time. That's in Jerusalem. And he said, pray that your flight be not in the winter or on the Sabbath day. Well, you know why, don't you? A Jew won't go very far on the Sabbath day. He'll go about 1/4 mile. You see? So Jesus is talking about something that is local there in Jerusalem. So there's going to be a remnant that has heads up. They will know exactly where they are in the tribulation period because they'll be reading the book. They'll be reading the book of Daniel, the book of Hebrews, the book of James, 1st and 2nd Peter, Jude, Revelation, and they'll know exactly where they are in the tribulation period. They'll know more than you know about where you are. We know the rapture's coming, but we don't know where we are in relation to it. But they've got it down. Turn to the, I don't have this in my notes. This is a cardinal sin to do this, to go for something that you don't have down, because then you have trouble finding it. Go to the book of Daniel. Go to the book of Daniel, and let's go to chapter 12. Well, let's just look at chapter 12, okay? And at that time, that's the time you and I are talking about tonight. At that time, Michael shall stand up. Happened right there in the middle of the tribulation period. He shall stand up, that great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. That's for Israel. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation ever to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that is found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. Now watch verse 3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood over two, the one on this side on the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed with linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, which held up his right hand and his left hand. We read about him just last week in the book of Revelation. To heaven, and swear by him that liveth that ever, that it should be for a time, times, and a half a time. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, and I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the end of the time. Daniel read it, didn't know what he was talking about. He had no idea. He says, what does this mean? The Lord said it's sealed up till the end of the time. That's why the book that you're studying tonight is called the Book of Revelation. It is a revelation of Jesus Christ and His coming. Verse 10, many shall be purified. I want to read verse 9 again. And he said to me, he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. Now that's what I was trying to say, that in the middle of the tribulation period, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be a remnant of Jews that will understand when they see the Antichrist in the temple and offering the abomination, and they will flee out of Jerusalem. But there's going to be another remnant that won't understand, even though they try to serve God. And it is this remnant that the dragon, the Antichrist, goes back and persecutes in the city of Jerusalem. Probably has them all put to death, or at least most of them. And so we read about it in Revelation. Are you back in Revelation 12, 17? And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which kept the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. These are Jews who will believe in Jesus Christ as the Messiah and still observe the Jewish laws, just like the Orthodox Jews do today. Okay, these are not Seventh-day Adventists. I mean, nothing so pathetic as a Seventh-day Adventist trying to tell you, see there, these are Seventh-day Adventists because they keep the law and all that kind of stuff. That's just, well, we can go to chapter 7 and say those are Jehovah's Witnesses. You got the same thing, right? So I just say they're Baptist. As much proof for it as they do. All right? So then when we come to chapter 13 and verse 1, we see then this beast rising up out of the sea. And look at chapter 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And maybe next Sunday we'll try to identify those. And upon the horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. You might want to study that out this week. And a bear. You might want to study that out too and see who the leopard and the bear is. And then a lion. Check it out in the Old Testament in Daniel and see who the leopard and the bear and the lion are. And here it is in the book of Revelation, and it's what John sees. Verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. This is the Antichrist. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like to the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And nobody will be except Christ. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue, how long, folks? 42 months. So you know then that you're right back to the middle of the tribulation. It's the 42 months, the last half, when all of this hell takes place on the earth. All right? And so it's a 42 months. Verse 6, And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his temple and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, look at this, and to overcome them. And power was given unto him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So this thing starts over there in the Middle East. It is headquartered around somewhere close to Jerusalem, but it is going to eventually, like you throw a pebble in the river and the water, a pond, and the ripples go out, and the ripple effect is going to go into all the world. The world is not going to escape. It is not, the whole thing is not confined to Jerusalem. Look at verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. Keep in mind that the body of Christ is gone to heaven at this time. The church is gone. The only thing you have left is Gentiles that have turned to God by the preaching of the 144,000. The majority of them have been martyred. The 144,000 have been raptured. They've taken up to heaven. You've got a little remnant hiding somewhere down there in Petra. You've got another little remnant there in Jerusalem that now is being persecuted by the dragon. Don't you see that the light on the earth at this time is just about put out? It is. It's just about out. See, it's not hard to figure out. So it's just about put out. Verse 8. Therefore, when the light is put out, everybody's in darkness, right? So guess who they worship? They worship the Antichrist. Don't you see the attitude of America turning toward Bible-believing Christians? Huh? You hear it in the news all the time. Don't you know you're the troublemakers? You are. You're considered the troublemakers by the news media. You are the right wing. You are the negative, hate mongers. You are anti-black. You are anti-Catholic, you see. And on it goes. And pretty soon, Bible believers are going to be, you see, you know where it's going? It has to go that way because of the battle that's going on up here that you don't see. You get the picture? And if you will keep your eyes up in heaven and understand what's going on, it'll help you to have victory on a daily basis in your life. Let not your heart be troubled. Don't worry about it, folks. We will still win. We still win. Still win. We win because he won. He said, because I live, you shall live also. So don't worry about it. There's only two things can happen to you. One is you live, the other one is you die. There's no in between. Right? Now, if you live, you're raptured when the trumpet sounds. If you die, you're resurrected when the trumpet sounds. Right? Can't beat that. It makes no difference. I put my mother, forgive me again, okay? But she's on my mind. I put my mother to bed right before I came to church. She said, tell everybody hi and tell them I love them. I just thought about that just now. She said, tell them I love them. And here's what she said to me. If I'm not here when you get back, I'll see you in heaven. Isn't that good? If I'm not here when you get back, I'll see you in heaven. I mean, how do you defeat anybody like that? See? So don't let these things overwhelm you. All I'm trying to do is so that you can see the world through the Bible eyes. That's all I'm trying to help you do. Thank God that we are not appointed to this day. and that we are going to be raptured. Not because we're anything, it just happens to be God's plan. All right. I don't know where we were. Verse 9. Verse 8. And all that dwell on the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. Verse 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. And he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with a sword must be killed with a sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Some people believe that this is talking about the Antichrist, that he kills with a sword. He's going to be destroyed by the sword when Christ comes. Others believe that it's talking about that those in the tribulation can make a choice. He that's for the sword, choose the sword. He that is for this kind of death, in other words, you can choose your death, but it's coming to those in the tribulation period. Now, the beast from the sea has already been on the earth, I said, in his mortal stage during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. He was present before the first seal was opened and the white horse came forth. However, in the midpoint of the tribulation, he receives a deadly wound as the 7th head, and then emerges from the pit as the 8th king, comprising all the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Thus, this beast comprises all the powers of the earth in combination. And it's a combination of the leopard, which is Greece, and the bear, which is Medo-Persia, and the lion, which is Babylon. If you look at verse 2, it says, And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. His feet were like a bear. His mouth was like a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat was his great authority. And of course, his seat will be one of universal power. It is the dragon who energizes the beast. His power and influence is so great that the whole world is deceived by him and his demon teachers. Under this head, there will be a temporary utopia, first 3.5 years. And Daniel tells us that one of the Antichrist's successful tactics. Turn to the book of Daniel. We'll take another 10 minutes and we'll be through. Okay? But I want you to see his tactics that he will use, especially in the first 3.5 years. Daniel gives you those. Look at Daniel chapter 11 and verse 12. And you need to pay close attention to this. Daniel 11:12. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by what? By flatteries. Look at chapter 11 and verse chapter 11 and verse 32. And such that do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. If you look again at verse 34, now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen or helped with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. Thus the world will proudly worship the beast. He will flatter them, and he'll be Mr. Charisma, and the world leader that the world is looking for and believes that they so desperately need. Leadership. The saints will be seen in the same light as the 2 witnesses. People will believe that the earth must be cleansed of Bible believers, and the beast will make war against the saints and overcome them in verse 7. In other words, he'll have open season on them. His defiance lasts 3.5 years, verse 5. He will publicly blaspheme God in his temple. He will literally direct his hatred toward the heavens, challenging God to do something about it. And those who worship him will be mesmerized by the power and his apparent bravery. His power will extend to all the earth. Everyone will be commanded to give their full allegiance to the beast, and only those at that time whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life will refuse to worship him. And it's worth noting that the record only shows that 3 Hebrew children refused to bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's image back there. So that shows you how small this remnant will probably be in the tribulation period. And then you have a beast from the earth. And if you look down to Revelation 13, verse 11, notice he says, I beheld another beast. Now, you have another beast. And the term beast is is in this context, is talking about the nature of the political leadership and political leadership at that time. So there is a beast that comes out of the sea, and the other one comes out of the earth. And some people believe that one has to do with the old Roman Empire, and the other one has to do with the Mediterranean. One is a Gentile, and the other one is a Jew. This is the teaching. But look at verse 11. And I beheld another beast come up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns. Remember, the other one had 10 horns and 7 heads. He's political. He is a combination of all those Gentile powers that we'll be talking about at another time. This one is not so much political in appearance, he's religious. Now notice how he is described. Notice he has 2 horns like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. Well, I guess he does. He's empowered by the dragon. So you see his appearance. You know his appearance, don't you? You know, his appearance. He appears as a lamb, but he's a dragon. Speaks like a dragon. Watch what he does, verse 12. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast. This is idolatry, right? Because he's getting the world to worship a man. Do you know of any religion where the people worship their leader? Amen. Not only that, he has them to build an image to their leader, and people have to bow down to the image. Do you know religions that bow down to images? This one fits the bill. Now watch it again. Verse 12. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused all the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doth great wonders. Now, this religious system believes in doing miracles. You get the picture? Now we're into miracle working, and signs, and wonders. Well, do you know of any religion that they have their people to reverence and worship and honor their leader, and worship their leader and bow down to him, and then they have images built to religious people that they bow down to them, and they still believe in miracles and signs and wonders? I do. But I can't say who it is because it wouldn't be politically correct. It would be a hate crime, and I would be nasty and all that. So I just kind of skim across, and those of you in the know. Verse 14, and he deceived them that dwell on the earth. Look at this. Oh, verse 13. Now, he doth great wonders, so that he makes fire come down out of heaven in the sight of men. Now, think with me. Remember earlier we have those 2 witnesses? They last how long? 3.5 years. Remember those 2 witnesses? We said they're possibly Moses and Elijah. And they're going to do miracles, and probably call fire down from heaven, like Moses did as he stood before Pharaoh. But when Moses did that, guess what? Pharaoh's magicians stepped up and did miracles just like him. So when these 2 witnesses of God